Okay, hi everyone. We are live. I'm going to wait a few minutes for everyone to come on. But just know if you are here for the webinar, you are in the right place. I'm Megan. I'm just going to wait a few minutes, so bear with me, especially if you're watching the recording. This is the boring part where you have to wait for everyone to come on. I'm just going to check check in and see how we're doing. All right, we're just going to take a few minutes before we get started here. If you have any questions about how to structure your week, you can pop it in the Q&A box right now. All right, sounds like people can hear and see me. I heard that Google Hangouts were down yesterday, so I was in a little bit of a panic about today. I heard that people that had them planned for yesterday got a bunch of error messages, so I'm glad that people can hear and see me. And again, we'll get started. I'm going to give just about one more minute for everyone to jump on. If you are jumping in late and you want to click that live button, that's going to catch you up to where we are. So if you're joining a little bit after the 10 o'clock hour, you can hit that live. And I'm just going to check. I have a few people on the back end making sure they can see me. And I'm just checking in with them because you never can trust good old Google. All right, hang on. One person can see me, one person can't. Okay, got a couple of viewers on now. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to plan your week for Mama CEO success. And I'm also going to be answering any questions you have. I got a bunch of great questions submitted ahead of time, so I'm going to be answering those. If you have any questions, just pop them into that Q&A box, or you can pop them over onto the G+ page, and I will click back over there and check and see if anyone has questions there. Yeah, so you can pop them in there or over on the G+ page, and I'll kind of check back and forth when I get to questions. All right, we are going to start in just a second, given just a few more minutes. If you are here, oh, yay, I see that we're on. If anyone wants to pop in a little comment that says they can see me, they can hear me. And I'm wearing my necklace that I got in Peru, and it looks like it has ladybugs in it, but they're really little seeds. I got this on a pre-kid trip to Peru. Okay, so that's what you get when you tune in live. You get to learn where my jewelry is from. All right, so thank you guys so much for being here. I'm Megan from meganflatt.com, and again, we are talking about ways to plan your week for Mama CEO success. And we're going to be talking through my top 3 tips, as well as a couple other things. I couldn't narrow it down to 3. So I've got top 3 tips and then some bonus stuff to talk about. Plus, I'm going to be answering all your questions about how to balance life with being a mom and running a business. And I'm also going to be telling you about how you can get involved in my Mama Mastermind, which registration opens today. And I'm going to be telling you all about what that program is and how you can get more support from me and from a group of pretty amazing Mama CEOs to help you on your journey through business and motherhood. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Again, I'm answering all your questions, so just pop them either in the chat box right here or pop them over on the G+ page. Okay, and I'm just going to check. All right. Summer Howard says she sees me and we are golden. And Susie says I look great. So, hey, I'm taking those 2 and I'm running with it. So let's dive into our content today. So like I said, I'm going to be starting off with my top 3 tips on how to plan your week for Mama CEO success. It's probably the #1 question that people ask me is, how do you get it all done? How do you plan it all out? We've got kids, we've got families, we've got volunteer things that we do. We're working in our kids' schools. We've got kids' appointments, all sorts of things. Plus, we've got stuff come up. Like, I'll be totally honest. I'll be totally transparent. My daughter had the stomach flu Tuesday and Wednesday, and I got it yesterday, and I was completely out of commission yesterday. So how do we still run a business when we have things like that come up? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to give you my 3 tips just straight off the bat, and then we're going to dive into them a little more deeply as we talk. So the first is to define your grade A time and be fiercely protective of it. And I'll tell you more about what that is in a minute. The second is to schedule blocks of time for certain activities. And even though sometimes people get a little panicky about scheduling certain activities into certain blocks of time, I love what my client Angie Buss from the Party Bus says about scheduling. She says, I've never felt more flexible once I started scheduling. And that seems like an oxymoron, but it really helps you. And I know one of our questions, I think that Susie asked, one of the questions was, what do you do when things come up? What do you do when someone has an ear infection or you have to deal with a school issue or something like that? And I found that having those blocks of scheduled time, it's like a giant game of Tetris. You're able to move things around into the next available block of time. So that's why scheduling things is important, and we're going to dive into that a little deeper. And then the last thing is asking for support. I absolutely could not have run my business and my family this last week without the support of other people. With my daughter being sick and then with me being sick, it just wouldn't have worked if I didn't have friends to call in some playdate favors, if I wasn't able to ask my husband for support and have him help out, if I didn't have a team behind my business to help keep my business running while I was out of commission. So absolutely asking for support, whether it's paid or not. You can't do it all by yourself. So let's dive in a little bit deeper here now. And again, if you have any questions along the way or you want to comment on something, just pop it in the chat box and I will answer it. So before we even start planning our week, we need to step back a little bit further and talk about what our values are and what our stress triggers are. And I find that this is really, really important because moms, we just do it. We just take care of everything. We make sure it gets done, and we don't always think about how, what's the best case scenario for us, or how would we like this to play out? And we got some great questions. I'm going to flip in my notes here we got some great questions about how do you deal with expectations and how do you hold boundaries? And those are such great questions. And I'm going to address each of those specifically, but this is the first stage of that, is know your values and know your stress triggers. So if you value spontaneity, or you value being able to, kind of pick up at a moment's notice, or you value always being home for dinner or always having family dinners, then that's going to help you start to structure your week. You're not going to take client calls during that dinner hour. And it helps you start to set up some boundaries. It helps you just start to have a bigger framework when you think about what your values are. Maybe you always want to have your weekends free to go do things with your family, or maybe the weekend's a great time for you to work because you spend a lot of time with your family during the week. And maybe you really value your partner or your parents. Maybe it's the kids' grandparents, or you really value them getting to have some quality time with the kids and have that relationship. So you take that time on the weekends to get work done. So when you start with your values, it's a really great place to start when we're talking about structuring your business. The second thing is stress triggers. And I talk about these a lot because we're all triggered by different things that get us feeling a little overwhelmed or feeling a little discombobulated. And once you can kind of define what those specific things are, then you know how to plan around them. So for example, some people might get really stressed by having a lot of things on their to-do list. So they want to structure their to-do list a little differently so that they don't see all 47 things that they have to do. Maybe you have a big kind of brain dump list, but then you separate out your to-dos onto a Post-it note. I love Post-it notes, where you can just see 3 or 4 to-dos at a time. That can help you manage that stress. Or for me, and this goes into what we're going to be talking about today, for me, I get really stressed not by a long to-do list, but when I don't know when those things are going to happen. So for me, having my week structured so that I know when I work on different things in my business, when I do different things for my family, that helps me eliminate my stress. So knowing your stress trigger. So if you have a piece of paper, or if you can think of it right now, jot down some things that When you start to feel overwhelmed, what tends to be the cause? Because if you can be preemptive about that, then you can avoid that stress or at least know how to manage it. The other piece of advice that I want to give you before I dive into my 3 tips, and this is something that my good friend Susie Estevan reminded me of a few days ago or a few weeks ago, is this is your business. This is your business and you get to structure it the way you want. And again, this goes to the question that Lacey Boggs had about boundaries and Maggie Patterson had about setting expectations. This is your business and you get to set it up and run it and structure it the way you want. And yes, there are best practices. And yes, there are things that we can learn from other people. And we can ask our mentors and our coaches and our business friends, hey, how do you do this? Or when do you send out your blog? And we can get some ideas from that. But at the end of the day, this is your business. And I'll give you an example. I used to always take my clients' calls on Mondays and Tuesdays. But what I realized, I volunteer at my daughter's school on Fridays, so I don't really work on Friday. And then Saturday, Sunday, a little bit more up in the air. Some weekends I'm able to work, some weekends I'm not. But what I found was that going roughly 3 days without getting to work and then diving into client calls on Mondays and Tuesdays, it left until later in the week before I was really able to work on the pieces of my business, kind of the idea of working on your business versus in your business. Even though I was working, seeing clients, I wasn't getting to do kind of some of the things on my to-do list. So I changed my work schedule so that I no longer see clients on Monday. One of the things that I value in my workday, and one of the things that's a stress trigger for me, is not having some big chunks of time where I can really dive into whether it's creating new content for a program or writing blog posts or whatever it is. I like those big chunks of time. So I've now structured my week where, for the most part, I don't see clients on Monday. That gives me a big chunk of time on Mondays to really get some things done inside my business. And then I see clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And my clients can start to get used to, okay, if I'm going to schedule an appointment, I know it's going to be on a Tuesday or Thursday. Now, obviously, sometimes something comes up and I can shift that around. All of these planning ideas, I'm not suggesting that you become a robot and that, everything's like, it's 9 o'clock, I must do this now. No, but you're setting up these frameworks and these parameters to help you feel more in control of your business. So just remind yourself, and if you need to write that on a little sticky note and stick it above, I have all my little reminders right above my desk here. You need to remind yourself, hey, it's my business. I don't want to blog every week. Or it's my business. I want to blog 2 times a week. Or I wrote down a bunch of other ideas. You can decide when you see clients, how often you blog, what days. Maybe you don't want to start seeing clients until 11. Maybe, you really value your meditation time and your workout time. And so you want to be really protective of that, and that you're going to get the kids off to school, you're going to work out, you're going to have time to meditate, and then you're going to start your work day at 10. That's your decision. You get to decide. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. If we wanted someone else to set our schedules, we'd go work at Jamba Juice. So, and this is hard. This is hard for us because most of us are in service-based industries and we want to serve. We love what we do. I know Parrish Wilson had that comment where she said, how do we set up those boundaries when we love what we do and we want to be of service to our clients? And Lacey mentioned that as well. And this is hard. We want to be available. It's one of the things that I value. It's one of the things that I want to be for my clients. I want to be available to them. I want them to be able to get in touch with me. But by setting up some of these frameworks and parameters, then everybody's just on the same page. They know when they can get a hold of me. I got a great tip. I completely stole this idea from Val Geisler. She has in the signature line of her email, she has her work hours. And she says what days she replies to emails and when she's not available. And I thought that's so brilliant because if someone emails you, then, and you email them back, they're going to say, I return emails on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or I return emails every morning at 9 a.m., so that then you're managing those expectations. So some great ideas there. Okay. So let's dive into my actual 3 tips. Those really were tips. I should have called this my 5 tips for Mama CEO success, but since all the marketing was already out, those are your bonus tips. Know your stress triggers and remember it's your business. So the first one is to to define your grade A time and protect it fiercely. So grade A time, if you've hung around me for a while, you've probably heard about grade A time. But grade A time is that time for me. I define it as when you have the most brain power and the least amount of distractions. And you want to take your grade A time and you want to put your grade A tasks into your grade A time. So for me, my grade A time is going to be when my kids are at school. My kids are 4 and 6. I have one, my older son is in first grade, so he's in school, full time. My daughter's in preschool. She goes to preschool 3 days a week. Well, she actually goes to preschool 4 days a week, but we're at a co-op preschool, so I go with her one day. So I don't really count that as a work. Obviously, I don't count that as a work day for me. So she's at school 3 days without me. And so those 3 days, those are my grade A time. Plus, I'm an early bird. I like to get up before my kids wake up, and so I get a little bit of grade A time early in the morning. Once I know my grade A time, then I can start to shift my grade A tasks into those time. So I always say, and again, you've probably heard this from me before, laundry, not a grade A task. The breakfast dishes, not a grade A task. For most of us moms, our time is limited, especially the time we can work on our business. And some of you out there are probably saying, well, that's great. Your kids are both in school. I only have nap time. That's fine. Whatever your grade A time, if you have 2 hours of grade A time a week or 20 hours of grade A time, it doesn't matter. But it's knowing what your grade A time is. And the less grade A time you have, the more protective you have to be of it. So I can throw in a load of laundry when my kids are home from school. They come home from school, they want to just watch a cartoon and have a snack for 20 minutes. That's when I throw in a load of laundry. That's when I do the breakfast dishes, not during my work time. And I always joke, I'm going to use my Jamba Juice reference again. If you were an employee at Jamba Juice, they would not expect you to do your laundry at 10 a.m. while you're at Jamba Juice. So if you are working on your business, even if you're working from home, don't do those other tasks that aren't grade A tasks and that aren't your work tasks. And then even within your work tasks, you can divide that down even smaller. For my grade A time, I want to be working on client work and content creation. That's what I need the most brain power for. So I want to be writing my new programs, writing blog posts, writing offers, working on clients' works, editing their sales pages. Those are the things that I want to be doing when my brain power is fully functioning and I have no distractions or low distractions. I could send out PayPal invoices or update my social media graphics or, play around on PicMonkey creating something. I can do those things when I don't have as much brain power. So later in the day, or maybe while my kids are home, but otherwise occupied. Or for me, even though I have a little bit of time after lunchtime, I'm starting to fizzle out by then, right before I go to pick up my kids from school. That's the time I can be doing those things. When I sit down at my desk, I want to be focused on those high impact things. And if all else fails, use the mantra, follow the money. Make sure that you're doing the things. Selena asked about how do you prioritize tasks? Well, I've got a couple of other suggestions on how to prioritize tasks, but man, when all else fails, follow the money. You are in business. Yes, we want to help people. Yes, we want to serve people, but you are in business to make money. And so if you are spending all your time working on tasks that don't make you money, you need to shift your priorities a little bit and make sure that you're spending that grade A time on the things that will ultimately bring revenue into your business, because that's what makes it a business and not a hobby. So that is my number one tip, is to find that grade A time. And so the way I do this, and I have this calendar page, and I'm actually going to send this out with the recording of the call. And this is a calendar page that we use in the Mama Mastermind. How funny, it makes the color go really wacky, but that's okay. So you can see right here, these are my daughter's preschool hours. So I've started out by highlighting out those hours. So when I start to think about the tasks that I need to do during the week, those hours, anything inside that highlighted square is going to be those grade A tasks. Anything outside those highlighted squares is going to be other tasks, other letter value tasks. Okay, so that leads right into the next thing, which is schedule blocks of time for certain activities. Again, I'm not suggesting we become robots. I'm not suggesting you schedule every single thing in your day. My good friend Beryl Young, she and I, we don't disagree on this, but we look at it a little bit different way. She likes to have big, expansive blocks of time, but she doesn't necessarily define what she's going to be working on. Totally fine. She still has those blocks of time defined, that this is work time or this is home time. And I like to divide it down a little bit further so that I know, okay, on Mondays and Thursdays, I focus on content creation. On Tuesdays, I focus on client work. On Sundays, I focus on business admin. I like to divide my schedule down a little bit more that way. You don't have to, but the idea that you have these blocks of time, and again, maybe it's just you've taken your schedule and you've said, okay, these are my work hours. I do all my work inside these hours. So that's one way. Sorry, I'm just checking my list. Oh, the one thing that I really recommend you do, so I'm saying you don't have to schedule everything, but I would really look at your household responsibilities. And those are some of the things that I would recommend scheduling today. If this is the takeaway from this call, is to look at some of those things that you do on a repeating basis, whether it's putting gas in your car, whether it's going to get groceries, whether it's doing the laundry, some of those things that you know you have to do on a weekly basis, and start to schedule those into your calendar. It takes the pressure off. I'm sure many of you have heard that I started with getting gas. So I would get in my car, I'd be frantic to get somewhere, had to get the kids to school or whatever it was, and I would realize that I was out of gas. And then it became this panic of where was the closest gas station? When was I going to get gas? Was I going to be late to my next appointment? So I finally just set up a schedule for myself where every Friday, this actually started when my son was in preschool, my daughter was an infant, every Friday after we dropped him off at preschool, there was the preschool was on one corner, gas station, coffee shop. I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect, right? So I would drop my son off at school, go fill up the car with gas, go across the street with my daughter. We'd get a coffee. I'd have a little bit of downtime when she was just kind of hanging out in her stroller. And that became our ritual every Friday. And so it's had to shift over time based on when my work schedule is and when the kids' school schedule is. But I always get gas. Now it's actually Friday afternoons. Now my daughter is in preschool. We go Friday after we get out of school. But I never have to worry about being out of gas because I always know that Friday afternoons, I'm going to go get gas. Same thing with grocery shopping. I've set Tuesday afternoons as the day that I go grocery shopping. Then everything else starts to fall into place around that. Meal planning, all of these other things start to fall into place around that. So setting some times like that, especially with your household tasks, it just takes the pressure off. And maybe it's something you do every day. Maybe you put in a load of laundry every day when your kids are in the bath. Christy Helmick from Jules Branch gave me that tip, that her kids are a little bit older. They don't need, intense supervision when they're in the bath, but she would put her kids in the bath, go throw in a load of laundry. So that's a great way to use a trigger, use another something that you do during your day to cue that repeatable task. So then you can also start to look even more closely at your work schedule. So we've got these defined times. You can start to look at tasks that you do on a weekly basis or on a repeatable basis inside your business. So most of us write blog posts every week. Most of us do social media every week. Most of us probably have some business admin tasks, paying invoices, sending invoices, some kind of business admin tasks that we need to do each week. You might have client maintenance work that you need to do or follow up, or maybe you have design time that you need if you're a designer, or writing time if you're a writer. So you can start to block out some days and times in your week where you don't have to worry about the things unless it's that time. So if I get an invoice from someone or a bill I need to pay, I pay my bills on Sunday. Again, for the most part. So I just am able to flag that. I put that in my inbox. I add it to my list. And then when Sunday rolls around, I just know that I go boom, boom, boom. And that way I'm not opening PayPal, closing PayPal. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of time, but it really is. And it helps me stay focused. I know that I always write my blog posts on Monday. During those big chunks of time, I write my blog post for the week. Then I don't have to worry. And believe me, I've done it. And believe me, I still do it. I'm certainly not perfect. Where it's like Wednesday night at 7 p.m. and you're going, oh my gosh, I've got to get a blog post out for tomorrow morning. And sometimes that still happens. But for the most part, I have time set aside on Mondays to write my blog post. Again, you don't have to systematize everything, but those things that kind of cause you a little bit of stress, those are usually a good indicator of things that you want to systematize. So I'm going to just pause really quick and see if there's any questions, or if anyone, I'm going to take a drink of water and see if anyone has any questions about what we've talked about so far, about grade A time, about scheduling certain activities, knowing your stress triggers, any of those things before we go into the last tip. So if you have, there may be a little delay on the recording, so I'm going to take a drink of water and see if anyone has any questions. And I'm just going to check. Let me just click over to the G+ page. Great. Okay, so my last tip for scheduling your week for success is to ask for support. And this is another thing that a lot of us don't do very well. And we think of that, you know, we work for ourselves, we should be able to do this ourselves. That's what the definition of being an entrepreneur or being a solopreneur is that I should be doing this all by myself. And I want to impress on you that that is not the case. Yes, you wear many hats, and you are probably the CEO and the COO and the CFO and the CIO, and yes, you wear all of those hats. And unlike a traditional corporate job where you have a very defined role, when you are an entrepreneur, and even more so when you are a mompreneur, you have many, many different hats that you wear. But the more support you can get in your business and at home is going to just help everything run a little bit more smoothly. And I know the first thing that you're saying is, oh, but I can't, you know, I'm just starting out in my business. I can't afford a VA, or I can't afford to hire a designer, or I can't afford more childcare. And I completely understand and hear you. And I am a huge advocate of bootstrapping your business. I'm still bootstrapping my business, but I bootstrapped my business for a long time. I did everything myself. And I'm not necessarily talking about only paid support. I'm just talking about asking for support and accepting support. That's the other thing that we're not always good at. So yes, absolutely. If you can hire a VA, or you can hire a sitter for a little bit of extra childcare time, those are absolutely going to help you with your week a little more. I know I was so sick yesterday, and thankfully I have a wonderful VA that I sent her a text message from bed saying, can you please tell all my clients I need to reschedule? And you know, that would have been really hard for me to do without her. So absolutely having a VA. I have Susie Estevan's amazing team does all my graphic design and all my branding, and it's amazing. But so if you can hire support, do. And I always see that the places where I've invested in my business, I always see a return. And it's always like, oh, so hard when you hit that buy button or you hit that PayPal button to send that invoice out, but you always see that return on investment. But it's not all about paid help. It's also just for asking for support. So maybe it is doing a childcare swap with a neighbor. Or I have a friend who also is an entrepreneur, and we do a lot of childcare swaps. Like I'll take her kid for a day, she'll take my kid for a day. So finding someone, even if it's just an hour play date, or I've found that just asking another mom to pick my son up from school and drop him off at home, it buys me an extra 30 minutes of time in my work day. And I can do the same for her on a different day. If I'm going to the school to pick up my kid anyway, I might as well pick up another kid. So asking for support and getting creative in those situations, it gets you those little bit of extra bits of time. Also, just reaching out. Many of you, I think everyone here on the call is in the Mama CEO Club, asking for support, asking for a friend for advice. We like to call ourselves the business BFFs, but I'm constantly sending off text messages or Facebook messages to some of my business friends saying, hey, do you think I should do an ebook or this, or getting advice? Trying to do it all yourself is just a recipe for burnout and overwhelm. So get support, whether it's creating your own accountability group, whether it is hiring a coach or a mentor, whether it is hiring a VA, and just asking for what you need. You know, whether it's a spouse or a family member, they can't read our minds. They can't read our minds, even if it's something we've been doing for a long time, even if it's something we've needed for a long time. You just have to say, hey, I've got this big thing going on. I really need to get this content out, or I really need to do this for my clients. I'm going to need an extra 2 hours this weekend. I'm going to need you to take the kids out so I can get this done. I think that 9 times out of 10, when we ask for support, we get it, but probably 0 times out of 10, when we just sit and wish that someone would help us, we're not going to get that support. So getting more comfortable with asking for what you need. Okay, we've got, great question from Jana, which was actually Jess's question too. And funny coincidence, it's actually one of the first questions that I was going to ask or answer. So let me just make sure. And again, if you have any questions about how to structure your week, we're going to be talking more about it as we go through some of these questions. And Jana, I'm going to get to your question right now, because this is also a question that Jess Ryan submitted earlier. She said, what are some fast, practical tips on keeping your business from tanking or slowing when you can't devote as much time to it, like during summer break or long holiday breaks like Christmas and spring? And Jana said, how do you manage the summer when school is out for the kiddos? So these are really, really great questions. And this is something that we deal with as moms, is that we have these finite times. We have these finite school hours or childcare hours or nap times, or we've got these times where, I know my kids were just out. We have a midwinter break that they call ski week. We have a midwinter break that we just passed. We've got spring break coming up. We've got summer. So here are my tips for that. And I was able to write them down ahead of time since Jess submitted this. But my big piece of advice is plan long-term. So for the most part, we know when these big school breaks are. We know when these big breaks are. And so start and look at your whole year, or I like to look a quarter at a time. So I'll divide up, just fold a piece of paper into 4 quadrants and have, we're moving into Q2. So Q2, 3, 4, Q1 for 2016. And then you kind of know when those big breaks are. So you know when those summer breaks are, and you know when your spring break is, Christmas break. And then you start to put in what I call your big rocks. So the big things that you're doing in your business, whether it's the launch of a product, or even if you're not, if you don't launch a program or you don't launch a service that way, just the time where, okay, in this chunk of time, I'm going to have more time to devote to my business. So that your year is going to be this kind of ebb and flow of, okay, during this month, like during, January, February, March, even though there's a break in there, I still have a lot of time to focus on my business. Okay, April, we've got spring break, and then May, June, I have a little more time. Oh, and then July, August is gonna back off a little bit. So looking at your year like that and knowing ahead of time, okay, so now I want to put these big business projects in. I want to launch something in March, and I want to launch something in September. And then I want to do a smaller launch in January and you kind of keep piecing those things out. And then when it comes to summer, I have, I just want to make sure I answered what I had said. I was plan long-term, look at your quarters, and then put your big business goals around those. And then summer. So summer, when you've got these big breaks of time, you kind of have a couple of options. And this is where it goes right back to what I said at the beginning. This is your business, and you get to run it the way you want. So one option is to kind of keep things going status quo. This is what I did last year for my summer, is that I planned childcare. I planned summer camps for my kids. My daughter was kind of able to keep going to her preschool. I planned summer camp for my son. I planned a few weeks in there where we would be doing things as a family and we would be going on vacation. But for the most part, I kept my business running through summer, and I chose to invest in childcare. This summer, I'm going to do things a little differently. This summer, for the first time ever, and we'll see, I'm going to document the whole thing on my blog so you can follow along and see if it happens, that I've decided to take 3 solid weeks off, basically all of July, or the first 3 weeks of July, I'm taking completely off from my business. I'm going to pre-write my blog posts. I'm going to kind of set everything on autopilot. and I'm going to see how it goes. I'm going to see if I can do it. I'm going to see if I can take that back seat. And I'm going to see how it goes. So those are the decisions you get to make as a business owner. Do you want your business to keep going through those breaks, or do you want to be able to take those breaks with your kids? And for me, for this summer, it's going to be a little bit of both. So July, I'm going to not work very much. August, I'm putting the kids in camp. I've asked my parents to help babysit a little bit in August, and I'm going to ramp my business back up in August because September, I want to launch in September again. So that's how I've kind of planned it out. But then again, it comes right back to how you plan your week. So even if you kind of want to keep your business running through the summer, but scale it back a little bit, maybe you decide, okay, I want to be able to go to the pool every day with the kids in the afternoon. So I'm going to plan some work time in the morning, or I'm going to get up earlier, or I'm going to plan one day a week of childcare, maybe 8 hours of childcare one day where you kind of cram everything in, so then you have more times during the week. I think the more you can think about it ahead of time, and the more you can plan what you want to do and have realistic expectations. And that was one of the places that I fell down a little bit last summer, was I thought that things would just keep going completely as they had during the school year. And that was not the case. So this year I'm planning on even with my revenue projections, I've planned lower for the summer. And yes, I will keep my business moving along, but I won't be doing any big pushes over the summer until we get towards the end of August. So let me know, Jenna, if that helped, if that answered your questions, or if we want to talk about it a little more, we definitely can. Because I have the itchiest nose, and of course you're seeing me itch my nose on camera. I'm sorry. Okay, so this next question comes from the ladies over at Prim Marketing. And they asked about getting the important things done versus the urgent things done. And this is, I mean, we could be talking business or home here, because inevitably something comes up. My son this morning was packing his backpack and realized that he had a homework assignment. He had to finish some coloring that he didn't finish at school during the day. And of course, I was sick and we just didn't have a chance to kind of check it last night. So talk about urgent things. Now, all of a sudden this morning, we're trying to finish this coloring assignment. So there's always these things, but the important things are the things that are going to move your business forward. The urgent things come up all the time. And sometimes they aren't that urgent. And so I think, just checking over here. Great. Okay. So I think when it comes out, I think the thing about important things, like I said, is those are the things that move your business forward. There's a reason they're important things. So you need to block out times that are non-negotiable. Now, everyone's kind of heard the like eat the frog analogy, where you're supposed to do kind of your most important thing first in the day. I don't necessarily always believe in that, or I don't necessarily do that myself, because, and the other thing that we always hear is like, don't check your email first thing in the morning, right? Then you're letting your email dictate your day. You're letting other people's needs dictate your day, not you. Well, for most of us in the industries that we're in, there is going to be a little bit of that. So I block out the first hour of my day, or of my work day, for checking email and figuring out what people need, what urgent things have come up, what does someone need right away, making a list of that. Then I can kind of decide, okay, how urgent are these? Can I push them out to the afternoon? What needs to get done? Then you want to have time blocked out for those important things that's non-negotiable. Again, I go back to like the big chunk of time. I have a big chunk of time on Monday. I have a big chunk of time on Thursday. Those are the times that I work on the important things in my business. And as much as I can, this goes back to that grade A time. I am fiercely, fiercely protective. If someone has an emergency, I email them back and I say, I completely understand. I can help you. Here's a few quick ideas. I'll get back to you after noon today, because my block of time is from 9 to 12. That's when I'm focused on important things. And most people, as long as they know they're going to be getting a response from you, they're fine with it. The same thing when it comes to social things. If someone's like, hey, can we go grab coffee after school drop off? I'd love to. I can do it on Tuesdays. I can do it on Wednesdays. I could meet you for lunch, but I can't do it during these blocks of time. The more you can just start to block out those times, and this really lends itself to Lacey's question too, about how do you set boundaries? I think you can literally set boundaries. Like you literally have on your calendar, like, yes, I can work on these projects during these times. And when those blocks are filled up, they're filled up. And then you have to make other decisions if you want to open up more blocks or things like that. But if you can start with, these are the times that I work on important things, and maybe it's an hour, maybe it's half an hour. RB Fast asked about, how do you find time for things like meditation and gratitude journal? And again, I think that it's about scheduling those and knowing that those are important things to you and scheduling them in, but also scheduling them in and being realistic. I've been really trying to get into meditation, and but I just found that right now it needs to be 5 minutes. Like, that needs to be my meditation, because if I set myself up for 20 minutes or an hour, it's probably not going to happen. So being really realistic. And so maybe you just have 30 minutes a day that you spend on those important things. Maybe that's where you start, especially if you're in a business that, I'm sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. Always something, right? But oh my gosh, what's going on out there? Okay, sorry. I was just making sure everything was handled with crazy dogs barking. But if you are in an industry, or you're in a position right now where you're doing a lot of client maintenance and a lot of urgent things are coming up, me telling you to set aside 3 hours a day is not realistic. And you're like, well, that's not going to work for me. That's fine. Just set 20 minutes. Say every day from 9 to 9:20, I'm going to work on the most important thing in my business to move my business forward. And then at 9:20, it breaks loose and I'm just dealing with client stuff the rest of the day. But you just start with that little bit of time and a little bit more and a little bit more. It's like the analogy of with exercise, where if you decide you want to run a marathon, you don't step out your door and go run 18 miles. You start with 1 mile, then you start with 2 miles. And it's the same thing with time management. If you decide you want to fit in time for those important things in your business, you want to fit in time for a meditation practice, you want to fit in time to eat lunch, you want to fit in time, you could start by saying, okay, I am going to take 30 minutes on Mondays and Wednesdays to eat lunch. The rest of the time, I will cram something in my face like I've always been doing. But I'm going to start these little mini habits, and then pretty soon your week starts to be structured a little bit differently. All right. So any other question? I have more questions that people submitted ahead of time, but does anyone else have questions that they want to submit right now? I'm going to take another little water break. Oh, and I've got one more question that I want to answer. I do want to answer Susie's question, even though I started to touch on it. She asked, do you have a contingency plan? What do you do when there's an ear infection, an issue at school, or other kid-related interruptions to your work week? So this is such a great question, because it comes up for us all the time. And I know that I always find myself, like, oh, well, this week is a little crazy because I'm volunteering in my son's school for this. And then next week's, our weeks are always, like, as much as I say have this weekly schedule, there's always going to be some interruption, either planned or unplanned. There's always going to be something that kind of throws it off. And so that's why I really like when you already know what needs to get done. Again, I kind of use the analogy of it's like a little game of Tetris. If you had planned from, okay, from 10 to 12 today, I'm writing, my next 3 blog posts. And then you get a call from the school that someone's sick and you need to come pick them up. Well, that what was in that time slot was your next 3 blog posts. So now you have the opportunity. The next thing I wrote down was, now you have the opportunity to triage. Okay, well, I said I was going to write the next 3 weeks worth of blog posts from 10 to 12, but now that time is kind of been shot because I had to go pick up someone from school and take them to the doctor, get the antibiotics for the ear infection. Okay, so now it's 12 o'clock and we're home, and I've been on the couch, he's watching a cartoon, he's having some juice, he's resting. I'm probably not going to be able to write 3 blog posts, but I can write 1 blog post. And so that's where that triage piece comes in. And that's where okay, here's exactly what I was going to do in this slot. Or, for example, me yesterday, I did nothing yesterday. So my entire day, and thankfully, Thursdays are a day that I tend to not have quite as many appointments. It's a day that I spend, like I've said before, it's a day that I spend doing content creation, things like that. Oh, preparing for a webinar, things like that. So actually, of the days to get sick, yesterday was probably a pretty good one. But I was able to just see specifically, well, these were the 3 things I wanted to accomplish on that day. This one thing didn't need to be done at all. Let's just cross that off the list. I'll get to it later. The other two things I was able to move into a time slot this morning, and that's where asking for support really came into play, because normally normally Friday is my day to take the kids to school, but I asked my husband, I was like, hey, I'm kind of behind from yesterday. Can you take the kids to school? And then that bought me, it takes me about an hour to get my kids to school, do the whole round thing. So that bought me an hour to get some of the tasks done that I missed from the day before. So know what needs to get done. Already know what needs to get done. Triage things when you have to, and then ask for support. Those are my contingency plans. Oh, and the last piece, and this is something that someone else mentioned too, and this is I definitely feel this way, have some space in your schedule to move things around. And Lacey, this goes to what you were asking too about like boundaries, and I keep saying yes because I want to help people, but what happens then is your schedule is so packed that there's no wiggle room. So if something like this comes up, if you get sick, if your kids get sick, if whatever, if your internet goes out or whatever it is and something happens, you have no wiggle room to move things into other spaces. So always making sure, again, that's why I like to have some big chunks of time a couple times a week, or use the weekends as, I kind of always try to work for about anywhere from 2 to 4 hours on Sunday. I try to get in, but a lot of times I leave that really unstructured. I usually do business admin on Sunday, but that's usually also just the time for me to kind of catch up. It's time that my husband gets to spend with the kids. He takes them out, they go to the park, they do a picnic, they do that kind of thing. And I just have a little bit of catch up time for all those things that have kind of overflowed from the week. But if you have none of those spaces in your week, then it's really going to be hard. And then you end up disappointing people. And Maggie talked about expectations, and Lacey talked about like, well, I want to help everyone. I also try to think about it too, like, oh gosh, but if by taking on one more client or one more volunteer job or one more thing, am I going to end up disappointing someone? Then maybe it's not worth it. Or again, being really upfront. We're working on a fundraiser for my daughter's preschool. And I was like, well, I'm willing to do this, I'll make the table decorations, but the other pieces, I think that's just biting off more than I can chew, and just kind of being really upfront about it. Or I'd love to help you do this, but it's probably going to take me a couple of weeks to get to it. So just being really straightforward with that. And Lacey, I have a few more tips that we're going to get to in a minute. Okay. So before we move on, if anyone has any questions, pop them over in the chat box and I'll answer them. I'm just going to click over to the G+ page. How's everyone doing? Everyone good? It's Friday. I'm going to get a drink of water. All right. So we've been talking about support, and it's one of the things that you've heard if you've been tuning into the Mama CEO talks at all this week. It's one of the things that has come up in just about every single interview, has come up that need for support, whether it's moral support, whether it's logistical support. As Mama CEOs, we need that support. And so I want to just take a few minutes right now before we dive back into some questions to tell you about my Mama Mastermind. And this is an intimate group of Mama CEOs that are balancing business and family. And I believe strongly that we can't compartmentalize. Your life isn't compartmentalized, so your business planning can't be either. You have to business plan and home life plan at the same time to be a successful Mama CEO. And that's exactly why I created this program. The Mastermind is business focused, but unlike other programs, we're going to talk about meal planning. We're going to talk about parenting. We're going to talk about relationships, because that's what our life is. It's business and life all mixed up into one. And that's what we've been talking about all day today, is how our week, you can't be a robot. Your kid is going to be home from school sick, or you're going to want to. I love volunteering in my son's classroom, and it happens right in the middle of my workday, but I want to do that. And so I need to be able to structure my business so that I can be at his school from 11 to 12 on a Tuesday. I love this quote. Sarah Bradford, she's a holistic nutritionist, and she was one of my past members in the last round of the Mastermind. She said, "The biggest change after the Mama Mastermind for me was I have a plan. The focus on scheduling and balancing work and family life are huge. I'm more present with my kids when I'm with them because I get more accomplished during my work hours. And I love that. I love that she had that realization about her business and her life, and that through the mastermind, we were able to help her put that structure into place. Believe me, I am in the trenches with you. I don't always do it perfectly either, but I know that mama CEOs like you and like me, we are smart, we are driven, we are dedicated, but I've seen too many of us get overwhelmed and burned out. And that's exactly why I created the Mama Mastermind. I wanted there to be a place for us to come together, to build our businesses, to treat our businesses like real, honest businesses that they are, but also know that we have families and we have sick kids and we have birthday parties to go to and math centers to volunteer at, and that is all super important too, and that there has to be a way for us to blend that all together. And that's why I created the Mama Mastermind. So registration starts today for the Mama Mastermind. It's a very small group. The last round of the Mama Mastermind sold out, and I expect this one to sell out too. So you can go to meganflatt.com/Mama Mastermind. And I'll also be posting the link when I send out the replay of this recording later this afternoon. But you can go there to get all of the details of the program. Let me tell you, I'm just going to read you what you get. The mastermind starts on March 23rd. And it runs through June 30th. So it's 15 weeks. We run, it's 3 months, but a little bit extra. It's about 15 weeks. You get 3 one-on-one strategy calls with me. You get a printable, customized planner that I created that is what I use personally. And now I know a lot of the mastermind ladies use it as well. It's one place where you can keep your business and your home life all organized, in track, on place. I call it your Mama CEO manual. You get monthly business strategy sessions on topics such as branding, launching, sales, and I bring in guest experts for these, so you get different viewpoints as well, not just mine. You have a monthly group coaching call so that you get your questions answered, but you can also learn from your fellow Mama CEOs. You have a mini Mama Brain Trust group, which is a small group, a mastermind within a mastermind. So I'm splitting you into smaller groups for accountability, support, collaboration, maybe some commiseration. You get monthly bonuses from experts in the field of parenting, relationship, nutrition, household organization. So like I said, we don't just talk business. We're also talking about relationships. We're talking about our families, and we're talking about how to meal plan and how to organize our homes and all of those things too. You also have access to a resource library filled with downloads, videos, on things like building sales funnels, using your intuition, crafting sales pages, and growing community. And all of this takes place in a private Facebook community where you can come to anytime, no matter, we had people from every different time zone in the last round. Doesn't matter what your schedule is, what your kid's schedule is, someone's always available to check in and offer support. And that's what's nice about that Facebook group. So I'm accepting applications starting now. You can go to meganflatt.com/Mama Mastermind. Some of the spots are already gone. And like I said, it's a small group. I want to keep it intimate so that we all get to really know each other. And about 5 of the spots are already sold. So if it's something you're interested in, I would definitely check it out pretty quickly. I am offering a little bonus. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here on the call right now. And even if you couldn't be here on the call and you're watching this recording, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. So if you apply to join the Mama Mastermind this weekend, I don't even know what the date of the end of this weekend is, the 8th through Sunday the 8th, I'm taking $100 off your investment. And I'm also inviting you, any of the early birds that join, I'm inviting you to join in a special bonus call that I have planned for the week of March 16th. I'm still nailing down the details of it, and I'm keeping it a little bit of a secret, but it's going to be just super fun, super helpful. And you get invited to that bonus call if you join this weekend. And if you have any questions, I am around. If you want to jump on the phone this weekend or you want to email me, it's megan@meganflatt.com. I'm happy to answer any questions, talk to you about the program. If it's right for you, we can jump on the phone this weekend and hash that out. But I would love, love, love to have you join. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. The last session was amazing for me. It's been a dream of mine to put together. I've been planning it for over a year before I ran it in the fall. And I'm really excited. Everything I learned from that first session to apply it to this next session, it's gonna be really great. So I hope that you'll join us. All right. So now let's get back to a few more questions before we wrap up. So Selena asked, how do I prioritize my tasks? And this is a great question. And so it comes back to everything that we've talked about. But the different bit of advice that I want to give here is use your big goals as a filter. So whether you've set a goal for your whole year, like I set a word, flourish. So I might use that as a filter. So if I'm looking at my tasks and there's something on my list and I say, okay, is that going to help me flourish this year? If that's not the case, then it gets crossed off the list. But you can even break it down into a smaller, I try to set goals, kind of monthly goals or quarterly goals. So say you're really focused on list building, like you really want to build your list. This quarter, you're really focused on list building. Well, then when something comes up or something's on your task list, maybe it's, oh, I want to redo my about page. Okay, well, is redoing your about page directly going to correlate to list building? Probably not. So it gets moved lower on your list. So if you're looking at two things on your list, oh, I was asked to be interviewed for a podcast, but I also want to redo my about page. Okay, the podcast wins. The podcast gets priority because it's more correlated to list building, which was your big goal for the month. If your big goal for the month or for the quarter was to revamp your website and you get asked to be on a podcast or redo your about page, then you probably want to redo your about page because your goal was to revamp your website. So that's how I think about prioritizing. I wanted to talk a little more about Lacey, even though I've touched on her question a bunch of times, how to hold boundaries. She says, I have trouble saying no to people and end up overbooked. I just want to help, but I'm not helping myself. So your answer is kind of in your question. You want to help, but you're ending up not helping yourself. And ultimately, and I always think about this with parenting too. It's like we try to do so much for our kids, but then we end up burned out and then we end up snapping at them. And then like, was it really worth it anyway? And I always think of the analogy on the airplane, right? Where they say when that oxygen mask comes down, you want to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. So Lacey, the couple of things, and for anyone else who has trouble with this, which I know I do, I think we all do, I love the idea of think like a lawyer. So lawyers set a certain number of pro bono hours a month or a year that they work, and then they have kind of a set container already. So if someone comes to them and wants them to take on a case, and I'm not saying that you're just talking about doing things for free, but deciding what your container is. And then when someone comes to you and says, I want you to do this thing, then you're just able to say like, oh, well, this container is already full. I would love to work with you. I can do it then. Or I'd love to work on this, but it's going to take me a couple of weeks to get it done because I'm really full. I'm really at capacity. The other thing that's really helped me, and this is one of the things that we talk about in the Mama Mastermind, is to have a say no phrase. So often when somebody asks us something, I find this especially with my kids stuff and with school stuff, that if somebody asks me something to my face, I'm like, sure, I can do that, because I haven't had time to think it all the way through. So if you can think ahead of time of some say no phrases, then when you have those already prepared, so it's like a little script. So when someone asks you to do something, you can just say, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I'm actually booked up on my volunteer hours for this week, but I'd be happy to help you next week. And if you kind of have that already prepared in your head, a little speech already prepared, it makes it a lot easier. Maggie asked a really great question about expectations, how to keep them in check, especially the personal kind where boundaries aren't under contract. So sometimes it's easy with our clients to set boundaries because we've given them, this is what I do, this is what you'll do for me, this is what our contract says. But when there are those personal expectations, and this is advice, again, I've been going to Susie a lot for advice lately, but this is advice that Susie gave me that she does with her own kids' school. Decide what you will and won't do ahead of time. So when there's so many opportunities for us to get involved and do things and help out and support with our kids' schools and with our families and with everything else. And so kind of setting up some expectations ahead of time and decide, and also reminding yourself the things you have done. Like, okay, I volunteer every week in my son's classroom for an hour, so I probably don't have to also be in charge of the Valentine's cookie party or something like that, because I already do this. I don't need to do this. So kind of setting yourself up for that ahead of time. Like, I'm willing to, my daughter's preschool fundraiser, I will sell the required amount of raffle tickets, and I will work on the decoration committee. I won't go above and beyond selling raffle tickets, and I'm not going to volunteer to also, you know, clean up. So you kind of decide ahead of time. And then when someone says, oh, can you help, you know, on the cleanup committee, you can say, oh, thanks so much, I'm actually already on the decorating committee. You can have those little say no phrases. So that's one of the ways to deal with those expectations. So those are all the questions that I had pre-submitted. Let me just scroll through. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask about how to structure your week, how to set up your time? And if you don't have any questions now, but you think of something afterwards, just shoot me an email or post on the Facebook group, Megan@meganflatt.com, or if you're not already in the Mama CEO Club, it's Facebook Mama CEO Club, facebook.com/Mama CEO Club, and you can join there and ask all your questions and get amazing support from another group of Mama CEOs. So thank you so much, everyone. You guys were right at the hour mark, so I want to be respectful of that time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much to the people who were able to attend live. I really appreciate you taking the time out. Again, I would love to see you apply for the Mama Mastermind. We start March 23rd. I'm accepting applications through the 20th, and the early bird deal is through this weekend through Sunday the 8th. And you'll get all the details in the email that I'll send you this afternoon with the replay. And I'm also going to send you this blank calendar so that you can map out your week with your grade A time and compartmentalizing and scheduling different blocks of time. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. And thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you around. Have a great weekend.